Welcome to Big Fest, and this is our first panel of the morning. I am Katrina Starks, and I'll be moderating the future of education and gaming. Wanted to get the official title there. I am Dr. Katrina Starks, and I think there's another doctorate here. We're very proud of that. We're very tired, and so once you get that, it's like woo. Uh, so, um, I'll start off by introducing myself, and then and then they will introduce themselves. I'm at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. We've got some amazing programs. I happen to bring flyers with me if you want to know about what we do. Basically, we have a game studies and design program there that started about 2 years ago. It's interdisciplinary, and it's a minor that attaches majors so that people can have an area of expertise and then incorporate games into that. I'm very happy about that. Our serious games and game narrative, and I'm glad to be here. And also research. And on our panel, I will start by saying, please tell us who you are, and how you are integrated into games and education.
Also, you're lovely.
Thank you.
She just got doctor. Oh my God, I want to go back to school right now. I don't though. My name is Keisha Howard. I'm Young Gamers. I founded it in 2009 to fill the gap of what I didn't see in the video game industry. So over these 15 years, I have become a video game subject matter expert, specialty our community, consumer behavior, market development, and things of that nature.
Hi, everyone. Yes, technically, Dr. Akil Fletcher. I am coming here from Princeton University. I specialize in Black gaming community, specifically how Black folks use game sites to create community and identity. I do a lot of work following the pathways that folks use to get around and to avoid some of the more unfortunate things like racism in gaming spaces. I'm currently teaching a course called Digital Anthropology. But last quarter, I taught a course called Gaming Blackness, where we looked at the narrative design of games and how games utilize race in order to create and influence their own gameplay. And that is largely where I am coming from, and happy to talk more about that, going on. Thank you.
How do you come after so much greatness?
Because you great.
That part. Listen, this is my family. I am Jihan Johnson McLaughlin. I am a mom, and that's how I got here. So I was an assistant principal for about 20 years. I am currently a CEO of my own company with my son as my founder, where we just do digital awareness on the importance of technology, particularly in gaming, esports, but also edutainment. I'm also a PhD researcher where I am also examining the intersection of digital media when it comes to just Black students, particularly in HBCUs and HBCU gaming and esports. And I am also an esports education specialist with NASEF, where we go around the world globally and open up free esports clubs and helps close the digital equity gap by providing free resources and help build the foundation. So yeah, I'm excited to talk about more.
Such great people on this panel. I can't wait to let you hear their expertise. So I'll start with asking, what is the most important thing for students to know about going into the game industry?
So I'm gonna kick it off through K through 12. I think we first need to get started at a younger age. We need to, as just the Black community, be able to talk about what it's doing for our community instead of pushing the traditional trajectories of like nursing, doctors, lawyers. Understand the different career pathways that are eligible within the gaming industry. And I want kids to always revert back to the creative and unique skills that lie within themselves and truly authentically be themselves. That's what I tell kids every day when I work in the K through 12, but also bring people from industry within the settings of education for them to see it, like Akil, Keisha, things that they're doing allows kids to understand where education is and why we must have it. We all play games, but we have to meet students where they are.
To tackle that question.
Okay. Following up on that K through 12, Uh, when I myself and folks like Dr. Kishona Gray, run summer esports camps, it's largely a hey, come here and play video games, but they're actually going to learn something afterwards, and that education is largely about teaching them the opportunities outside of just like being a professional gamer or streamer or these other things that are very popular and visible for younger kids, but they can also understand that there's journalism, there's education, there's research, there's lots of different ways that you can influence the market outside of even just making games or playing them. But I do love playing them, so that's the important thing. But for my students at the collegiate level, it's really understanding the volatility of the market and understanding that all the skills that you develop may not be used within the games industry and can be applied somewhere else, like myself, who went into academia, another incredibly volatile market. So it's not looking good, folks, but there is opportunity.
I'm mean to kids. First of all, I get them. They're 10 years old. Parents just drop them off wherever I might exist. Like, you do games, my do things for my kid. I'm just like, wait a minute, ain't no money in it. I listen, kid. Number one, character development is everything. Kids can start right now. Not need to wait until you're the character development into competitive industry is right is like that continuous learning, that ability to search and comparative market analysis, how and where you want to be great, and like really that building a portfolio, know and what you can. So even though educational structure, especially ran by and Dr. Yes, is that what your name is? Yeah,
It
Akil.
is.
Yes. Yeah, they're really important, especially and and ethically by amazing that on a just building that character, they can have the foundation to really survive a industry as lucrative opportunity that there are, very exploitative, very difficult. So they're realistic of understandings of some of those challenges.
And I will I'll go ahead and add. So we had people talk about K through 12, and it's very important. My It's very important to get our K through 12s in there. My experience is more with college students, and I happened to found one of the only. It's no longer focused on serious games, but it was a Bachelor of Serious Games. And so one of the things I found was telling people two things. One, learning software that goes into making games. The film industry uses Unity and Unreal for VFX. So you can go into things that are not games. Learning about games helps you do other things. And also, there are several nonprofit organizations that have learned that teaching through games is wonderful. So they come with grants, they come with funding, and they don't have any expertise to make the game. So I've had a student who, for instance, the local utility company wanted to make a game to teach people what they can and cannot flush because it clogs pipes. She made the game as her capstone project. They liked it so much they considered it a demo and then hired her to make a larger, more robust version of it. So, you can make entertainment games, but you can also make games for training. And the game sector is going. It's basically overlaying all of these other industries. So I think that's important for people to know. And I've had to talk to parents about that when their kids say, I want to major in game development. So that's what I tell the parents. All right, going to the next question. So this is something that's really, really dear to my heart, especially with our kids. How do you work with the hardware and technology divide while you're teaching? Because game software requires machines that are a little bit more robust than just the regular computer you go grab at the store. And so, how do we support our kids in that way? And how do we deal with the socioeconomic divide and teaching games?
I'll start off with a couple of things. Partnering with these publishing companies. Shout out to community that's in the house. We did something where we partnered with Riot. They had a sector of their club where they were donating computers. And so we donated computers to those students and those schools that needed them. Another thing is just understand what you have. Understand what's in their smartphones. Teaching them the basic design does not require anything. Teaching the structure of gaming, business 101. How do I start off with my logo? Everybody has a smartphone. Everybody also has an old phone at home. So when you just have access to internet, you can do anything. We all have that. You have companies like T-Mobile that are partnering to make sure that students in underrepresented communities have one-on-one devices. But you also have all these grants, and I want to go back to what you're saying. There are so many federal grants out here that our community does not know that will provide us with the hardware for our students. And we have to start tapping in from the federal department, from like Homeland Security, Title IV, Title V funding, understanding the mechanism that's out there that they shed from us and keep away from us, and understanding that there are these other different companies that also want to donate. They just don't know how to get access. So we have to become more vocal about what we need, and partner with these organizations that have it, and these old computer companies that just have computers sitting in their closets. Like, donate them. Stop being selfish. Donate.
Of course, adding to what you're saying, I was working with Chicago Public Schools for a tech introduction to tech and video games. Have a For the summer, I just had kids like, well, how can I teach if I don't have the oh, and I'm just Chicago Public Schools, and think just foundation gaming. Before I did this, I went to architecture where I got to learn AutoCAD and Autodesk, had a T-square, had a ruler, had a pencil and paper. And we had to draft out the drawings by hand. And from that, like I learned a way of thinking about developing something because it wasn't just automatic. I didn't just fine. It was more so like, using the tool, understanding foundationally what games are. And one of the other things I like to is to gaming hardware, software, narrative, it's music, it's marketing, so many other things. Everything that you can as a role in gaming exists. Um, so it doesn't just have to be hard coding and programming. That might be a little bit how many opportunities there are in the so within that class, I was able to get young people prototype idea of a game, and that idea with their drawings, narratives, it included like gameplay design, like how would people interact, that sort of thing. And this was all using imagination, critical thinking, and creative thinking. That the impacts of that will then translate to the time when they do have access to that hardware. If not, make them more resourceful as individuals out themselves, parents, libraries, from wherever they can get it.
That was fantastic. God. Um, yeah, just to, I guess, follow up on that a bit. Like Jihan said, it really is about understanding the sort of like structural places where you can access the funds, access exactly what you need. So for a lot of my students, I usually get a 50-50 of folks who don't want to make games, but still want to interact and work with them, like myself, and then other folks who want to make games but think a little bit more critically about it, so they're just not making Nazi video games every 10 seconds. And for them, for me to even teach my class, I require a good amount of equipment for them to be able to play the video games or to engage with them. And it really is understanding the sort of internal networks of funding lots of these universities have money that's sitting there that you can use. And thankfully, I just got a couple of grants so I can take my students next year to Japan so we can look at some of the places where they're being influenced by their games. But, outside of that, you then have to look at the ways that you can use university funds and maybe even engage with the public in that case. So the stuff that we do at Kentucky with Esports Camp is largely run out of the University of Kentucky, and all of the folks with all the kids within the Lexington area can come in, engage with equipment that they never really have the opportunity to play with, and not only engage with games like League of Legends and other things outside of like the fighting game community and other stuff like that Black folks are, very much represented in. Get to play things like that, but also work on equipment that just isn't sometimes affordable in that case. So it really is taking what you have and really giving it to who needs it the most at that point. Yeah.
Yeah. Seems like consensus is find people with money and equipment and use those resources. Yeah, it would be great to have like.
I have not ever been good at that, so I have to MacGyver the stuff together all the time. It's kind of like the old thing, photography, right? Like we've been looking at pictures, over 100 years. Some of the best photography, oldest. So it's the idea of it, the art of it, design of it, that is really important. Like I've met young kids, they have like rocket launcher type computer setups just to play Fortnite because they're thinking like they need that to compete, to be a part of the community, show off, right? But they're not doing anything. Have kids that have nothing. They have, this is what I think, and here's an outline of a game, and this is what I'm inspired by. So, really have to sort of balance sort of passions out. Like, y'all want the latest, greatest, newest thing, but without the foundation, being able to understand design and game theory, game mechanics, that sort of where how are you, right? What's the impact?
I think that's one of the reasons why I started my company is because we didn't have the basic, as a community, we didn't have the basic foundation. Everybody wanted the gameplay. Everybody wanted to just immediately be the streamers, the casters, but nobody was educated on what do I really need to know from an educational level to really learn the design process, but also learn the different areas of which I can be great in. Because we are not all gamers. I am not a physical gamer. I understand the process, I understand the concept, I understand where it can take kids and where it's going and where it can take our community. One of the things that I do within my company is that I actually just do workshops where I'm educating the community. So it may be those kids that have never been in the esports lab where they are missing digital literacy skills. So I'm gonna teach that through. Or I have a workshop, it's called Esports, Hip Hop, and Creative Arts, where I'm really just teaching the visual art and creative art process of design through esports and how hip hop, esports, and creative design really comes together collaboratively and really speaks to our community because we don't often talk about that, how we are the blueprint to a lot of these structures that we find currently within the gaming and esports industry.
So I'll switching gears, sort of. So we talked about the digital and hardware technology divide. So then on the other end, our industry is volatile, and we've seen that especially over the last few months. So how do you teach up and coming people who want to get into the industry? How do you teach for an unstable environment? How to come into something that seems to be so volatile and difficult to get into and difficult to stay?
All right, I guess I'm first on this one. So for me, it's a little bit different again because I tend to work with folks who are going outside of traditional development in that case, and it's difficult at all because I'm an anthropologist by training. And when I was getting my anthropology degree, the question was, what are you going to do with that? How are you going to make that work at any point in life? And I think I have, thankfully. But it's also understanding that with something like an anthropology degree or anything else, it is about selling what it is you can do. It's about selling the training that you have, and realize that many of these companies are going to be looking for things that you may not have thought is traditionally available, whether or not it be anthropological training or sociological training in many of these cases, whether you can go on to work with UX, you can go on to work with design teams, narrative teams, all these other aspects that you can take what degrees that folks are quote unquote calling useless, that aren't, computer science or engineering, and turn them into something fantastic. Because if you have a love and a passion like I did, I will out myself. I very much am a gamer. I love playing video games. My mission is to usually make everybody play video games. My wife has learned that. um, but for me, moving throughout the industry and throughout academia, it is very much taking the ethnographic skills, the ability to communicate with individuals one on one or in groups, to conduct any form of survey, and having that be applied where it needs to be. And, there's work, volatility. Yeah, there's work.
I think I'll return back to character development because just the education traditionally, especially in the experiences that I've had within education, I guess high schools and colleges, I sometimes the structures aren't there to serve the character development. And being that video games is competitive and volatile, the ability to that self investment is so important. You can't necessarily wait for somebody to tell you what to do towards you, because that's basically, in some ways how like the video game harm people. So like being able to get hey, this is within your hands, it's your responsibility, like how good holding people accountable. That's basically what I'm known for with my intern. That I'm relative, like there's no it's not a lot of softness, especially in today's age where we do want to be a lot more and accommodate versioning identity and have the language softness and that it would be a disservice to do that at the same time knowing what I know about how the video game industry, how like yes there's opportunity exploitative in the character development in a volatile space, everything, because you have to have the confidence, you have to keep on learning. There's never a day that you stop learning about this space. You have to be able to work with people and with other people departments, how all those integrate to make a complete game, a complete product, and how that person, that strong player, strong strong person. So like building that inner strength like this is incredibly important.
All of that is great answers, and I'm just going to be authentic, know yourself. A lot of us juggle with our ego. And in this industry, what I've found over these last 4 years is that this has been a space I can authentically be myself. And that's what I like to tell people. I am a unicorn when it comes to industries. I have been in education, I've been in entertainment, I've been in computer science. I met Akil when I started my PhD here at the same university. Um, and I'm also older. So I'm entering this industry from a lot of just understanding and being in just trials and tribulations. And what I like to tell some people, one of the things that I value the most is that I can use every skill, every degree that I have and do something, make a difference, create impact, but really make sure that I am, helping and advocating for those people that look like me in these spaces where we don't show up. This has been the most I've been around my people in these last 4 years when it comes to this. So doing more things like this, bringing students to see this, is also a way as well.
You. I'm gonna throw you all another curveball. I love that. So
Spicy.
So we've talked about design skills, we talked about character building, we've talked about all of that. And now in our industry, enter the robots. So what are we telling our young people about AI in games and how that is either changing or not changing the industry space that they are creating in?
So I'm also in educational technology. I've been on a ed tech conference tour since January. Well, actually last summer. That is the number one theme in all the conferences, AI in education. They are now teaching superintendents, principals, founders of school how to use it the correct way. I sit in a couple of different districts that are actually using it to help those students that have accessible learning disabilities, and they're helping it close the gap. For me, I think it's a creative way to just help those plan and figure out the ideas. There is also the issue of privacy and things. So I kind of play devil advocate, but I also want to see more Black people within this space designing AI for our people so that it's coming out right, it's designed correctly, but then also on a research side, finding more African Americans that are actually doing the research to talk about the racial bias within AI. So, I bounce back and forth. It's a great tool. I don't think people should be 100% dependent on it because it takes away creativity. But I like it. Students should too.
I agree with all that. Um, I am 50-50. Part of me is the AI hype is a little overdone. The other side is that there are real dangers, there are real aspects to understand, but there's also possibility. I don't mean to be a pessimist, but unfortunately, historically, when new technologies have been applied, they have often done or either utilized racialized bodies or have done wrong by them in many of these cases. Um, whether or not you want to look at the work from Ruha Benjamin or Sophia Noble, which you don't have to engage, great books, read, and all that other things. You see the ways in which algorithmically Black individuals have been either left behind or hypersexualized or inputted in just essentially viewed in ways that Black people are not writing the images or creating the images, but are experiencing, this funhouse mirror experience of what Black individuals can be. I've met lots of individuals who've used AI for art, and I don't mean like you steal a bunch of artwork and whatnot, but train the AI algorithms themselves, or for possibilities for teaching tools. For a lot of folks who are not aware or who do not have the fundamental skills to do what they need to do, AI can often serve as a tool to get them to where they need to be. But because of the dangers of AI, I typically tend to lead folks to be cautious, learn as much about it as you can, understand that our legal systems are not entirely prepared to deal with the outcomes of what AI is right now, and that protections are going to be have to put in place before we really take AI where it can be, that it'll boost human creativity rather than replace individuals, which is really where the fear is coming from for me. So yeah.
I would have to say, like, I'm absolutely terrified. I've been a tester for OpenAI for 2 years, and I'm very happy that, like, it's one that makes me happy that I'm 40 and I got to spend the first 20 years of my life without social really. So I got to like develop some brain that's. I mean, I'm not saying that people that's born after 2000. I don't know what I'm saying. All right. With the pandemic.
Hold on,
the
because I'm gonna have your
pandemic,
back because I'm in the 40 club too. I turn 40 in a couple
between
months.
right between the pandemic, the social media, and the AI. Ooh wee. Um. So, what I taught a class recently, and basically I told my students at Columbia, professor for game design, and I was like, I want you to use any tool necessary to prototype your game, anything that you have access to, including AI. One of the students, he asked me, he was like, "Is that the right thing to do?" And it occurred to me that, and it was a Hispanic boy, young man, and it occurred to me that oftentimes when new technology is presented to us, you know, marginalized demographics are often left behind. We're not the first, we're not the pioneers of this technology. We're given it after it's already been decided how it's going to be applied. We are like getting this information way after the fact. We're way behind, and it disturbs me how few of the people in my community have actually interacted with AI in a creative, meaningful way, even out of curiosity. And that part mixed with, just seeing how rapidly not able to tell the difference online between what's real and what's fake. I think that everyone should be aware of what AI can do and have like some baseline understanding and play with some of that currently exist. No matter who you are, no matter how old you are, it's here. And regardless of what we feel ethically about it, it's being used and it's going to impact us in ways that are in some ways beyond our control. So the only thing that I feel that we can do, educate ourselves as much as possible on what these, while also retaining the idea that we have to um, really focus on critical and creative thinking, as AI does increase the need to do that. It's like, oh, it's already perfect. I don't have to think beyond this. I don't have to create beyond. I don't have to have any new or original or authentic idea. Like when you're applying AI to something that is fresh for you, then it's a great tool. If you're just as a crutch, get through things, it is going to, I believe, lead to individual detriment. But yeah, I'm terrified. I think that we're far behind. That all of us need to really become very educated as it impacts every generation.
Thank you. I'll add to this one too, although I'm the moderator. So I think AI, I think it's a tool. I agree with what everyone said. I also know, just as in computing, garbage in, garbage out. Like, if the computer will do what we tell it to do and exactly what we tell it to do. So we've seen AI, and we've seen other parts of computing. We've seen it take humanity's racial biases and throw them back in our faces. Like, why does why do the light switches not see black people? Well, because they were weird that way. Did we know that we knew there was, but the engineers think that they're post racial. They're not. It comes out in the things they make. So I think, I kind of think that we need to go back to the fundamentals of design and the things that you're talking about, because in order to use AI effectively, you have to understand the underlying principles of whatever you're doing in the first place. Otherwise, you're not going to know what to ask it. You're not going to know the right questions. You won't know whether what it spits back at you is accurate or good enough for what you're trying to do. So I'm hoping it highlights ways in which we can possibly, and that it doesn't become the thing that we use to do things. Don't know what's going to happen actually. But
Skynet, Skynet. I'm kidding. I'm
kind of not. Like, there have been some robots, and they've just let them learn things, and then they'll start talking, really normally, and then they'll say things like, "Yeah, I want to take over the world." We're like, "No, stop." This dynamic scare me. But goes to a next question, which I think was contributed by Akil. How does gaming make us better humans?
You all can take it first.
I think that was my question.
Oh, was it?
It probably was,
Sorry.
exactly.
It was one of yours.
Get that question.
What it was, how does gaming make better humans?
Yeah.
Look at everybody in the room. Look at everybody in the room. We are all here. We're all here to serve a purpose. But we all know what our true love is for within ourselves. And I look at it from a spiritual place of gaming really connects people with so many different things. COVID really showed it. From building cross-cultural connections. My son has learned like different languages. He has his community, especially for the introverted people. It is a safe space. It is a safe space. It's a way for them to build their community. And I love seeing it because I'm an extroverted person, and so I'm seeing it as a mom. Um, it is also the place that I call home. Like, this is my family. Like, I'm talking about like off screen talk. They have been there for me. Akil gave my son like his first gaming setup, like ever. So it's family for me. And I just go back to being authentic. I have been able to see and sit in a lot of places right now because I've been authentically myself, but I've been able to watch different companies that I support grow and see the impact that they're creating and giving back to the community.
I'm just gonna have to second all of that. Conducting research throughout the pandemic, a little bit afterwards, it's fascinating to see the ways in which folks have just built out their communities, how they have found ways to have resources and to engage and to protect one another. I could get into the nitty gritty of all the defense mechanisms Black folks have developed in order to play and game safely, but I think what's more important is just the reality that these communities can come to exist, that they can perform the work that they are doing. The amount of spaces that I've seen a bunch of Black folks create churches and all these other things on things like Animal Crossing. I don't even go to church, but I was like, this is absolutely fascinating. I love this, right? And for the fact that individuals can create all of this, whether it be on The Sims, whether it be on Final Fantasy 14, which is where a lot of my research spent time in. It was thing I know. Uh, I was not kidding when I said I am a gamer. I have played a lot of things and a lot of hours are there. But for me, I grew up gaming. It was the way that I bonded with my mother early on, playing like old Sega games and things like that. Um, and I'm under 40, so it's fine. But I've seen, the ways in which that younger folks, I know people like to bag on them a lot, but millennial, Gen Z, Gen Alpha have really grown up in a way that the interactions with technology is so natural that interacting is seamless and you can really see where the new spaces are being developed and not only just on World of Warcraft or on Discord, but across platforms, across media. It's fantastic to see. So I can't see that other than being better people outside of all the little racist groups that I saw. We gonna ignore those. Gaming is great. We did it.
Oh wow. I love both of optimism. I really don't think that radicalization and should be as games can make better terrible. So we need to definitely know that. But like one of the things I think makes gaming makes better people. Games make better people. They inspire us better when we unplug from the right. So there's so many heroicism uh, or resourcefulness, like just building, right? And those traits, those that we way take them, practice them in games, apply them in our real lives, whether that be peers, whether that be relationships. So I think that is consider that like what happens to a person after they play or while during their play, like how are they interacting with, how are they developing, how are they inspired and motivated. So like for example, Final Fantasy 7 made me think about how terrible mega corporations to the planet. And I was just like, that's how I got really into solar punk later on. I'm like, oh man, I can finally be a Final Fantasy 7 character, my band of heroes. And again, like, how do you have a band of heroes? I think that a lot of old games with narratives that they had development, how you interact with people different from yourself, and why that's important. Why it's important to have those people solve big problems. I think that a lot of games has inspired people that way. Hope that we can develop in games that develop better human beings.
Right. We've got the 5-minute mark. I want to allow you time to ask questions of the panel. I do just want to add one thing to the question that I just asked. I love the cross-cultural communication that's possible with games and the way that I can learn about other cultures when we allow other people to be invited into the space. One of my favorite games, serious games, is called Never Alone. It's actually the Inupiaq tribe in Alaska made a game. It's in their language, so it's language preservation. I never heard their language before. There are documentaries embedded within the game, and it's about one of their ancient stories. And I love the fact that this little Alaskan tribe, it's the first, I think, indigenous game company that was ever created in America. And I love that they can share their story with us through a game. So I think that it's important to allow everyone in and make it a universal space where everyone can tell their stories. And now I'm going to open it up to you with our last 5 minutes. Do you have any questions for anyone on the panel?
That's a wonderful question. There's a lot of ways to go about it, and I think first there should be an understanding that obviously blackness is not a monolith, right? There isn't a need to portray blackness a specific way to identifiably be black in that way. Um, I also think that you can't always just rely on the phenotypical. Sometimes looking black or identifying as such isn't just enough because we've seen plenty of black characters that have been used to utilize white stories or non-black stories, which is fine. So there's a rough little gray area there where you have to hit the sweet spot where you are being authentic, where that typically comes from an engagement in different cultures and the expression of African American vernacular, excuse me, any form of language, any form of things that can provide or reference black identity. Obviously, this doesn't mean pull a Marvel and be like, you know, this is Odin's son. Like it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be anything as expressive, but I think if you are engaging your characters realistically and also utilizing that cultural reference not just as story but as gameplay, I always teach with Assassin's Creed Liberation, which the game plays kind of terribly, but there was an inspired decision there to utilize what it meant to be a black woman in the time period, New Orleans, where slavery is still taking place, and moving through those separate identities, offering you that identity of gameplay. I'm not telling you to create any sort of slave narrative or anything else like that, but what does it mean to be a 22-year-old black person living in Brooklyn in many of these cases, and how would that affect gameplay? Insomniac Spider-Man, not to tell you again with the exaggerated swagger of a black teen, but there is something fascinating in the ways of looking between a much older Peter Parker swing, be a little bit more precise and confident. Meanwhile, Miles obviously has a lot more exaggeration, has a lot more emphasis on his identity, and little things like that can be very helpful. So, yeah.
Oh, sorry. One question I wanted to ask you about there is honestly, if you wanted to expand on that as well, about specifically the mechanical representation of Black culture, like on top of the question we just got about Black representation, like visually as part of like fantasy and characters, and actually seeing those characters with that skin color. But is there any experience you've had seeing in games or game development about the mechanical design side, what the player gets to do that feels authentic to the Black experience?
I mean, I don't know. Like, I think that American slaves have a very unique experience. American, if you're talking about that blackness, otherwise, other cultural influences that we have to. I think that there's so many different stories. You can't. I'm not gonna say you can't go, and you're surrounded by people in your community. So like for me, whenever I'm did a game called Project Violation back, and it was community built. So we got all of these stories and all of these experiences that we were able to incorporate in the game that were authentic. So many people that weren't me, but had different blackness. So doing that sort of research, that kind of putting that time in.
I wanted to this. You hear me? So there was one game, and I don't know if this, basically it's a mystery ship. They're just tried to reach, didn't reach them out to the spaceship. Everyone's left memory back what they did. So it has nothing to do with blackness. International several different one black woman, and as you're looking around to find out what happened, look at their. So I open up all these lockers. I felt seen. The tiny little thing, like doesn't have to be. It what would be a black woman would have something and not like black. How do you maintain him? And why do the aliens have braids? Because it's actually more practical for us to have braids. All that other kind of thing. But basically, taking who you are every day, that in the that's something that people. So
I have a question. Longtime fan. I just want to say real quick.
we're
Really,
gonna have to wrap it up. So like,
Okay. I'll just can I get the question out just a little bit?
we have time for. I'm hearing we do not have time for one more.
Okay.
We have another panel coming up, and
All
our
right.
panels I think are only about 15 minutes apart. So we are gonna have to
It's okay.
stop. But I think everyone's milling around here. So if you want to talk to someone after panels, we should all be hanging coffee.
Well,
So
thank you for
so
opportunity.
much for our for attending our panel. Please stay for the rest of them. Stay for.
Yes, you can get a second hug first. Oh, how many?
Test 1 2.
Five of them, like this. First of them were like. Okay. So yes. Also, what? Texting her because
Oh yeah.
so really let's find the last one.
Attention. Hello, everybody. I want everyone to take their seats. We're going to be starting in about 3 minutes, everybody.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
The best.
Like
Okay, that's like that's like that. Alright, cool.
All right, everybody, take your seats. All right, everyone, take your seats. We're starting in 30 seconds.
Hey, is it on now? Oh, y'all messed up. I get talking to a mic. Oh man, everybody getting canceled. I can't wait. Okay. Stop. Oh.
Oh.
I am. And brainstorming creative solutions. And that's exactly what I do in my current job at Riot Games. So for me, transitioning from medicine to games was really about applying the exact same skill set in a different context.
And I started working in games in my second year of college. I worked on Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach, working on AI system for about a year before I moved into the AAA space. I was a tech design intern at EA on Battlefield 2042 before becoming a combat design intern at Wizards of the Coast on R&D. And now I've been at Riot for 9 months and hopefully many more to come.
Okay, hello everybody. My name is Jonathan Jennings. I'm a software engineer and game designer for the last 12 years. I started out, I was the typical nerdy kid. Video games were my life, right? That's how I connected to my classmates. I think I ran home to do after school, lived in the gaming magazines. Like my whole childhood was game. And so when I got a little bit older, I saw a commercial for like a game development school. I was like, you could learn how to do that? That's crazy, bro. So told my mom I wanted to go look at the curriculum. We went, took a tour of the campus. I fell in love right away. Studied game development for about 3.5 years. Then graduated. 6 months later, I got my first role in a mobile game studio. Did a lot of so I worked in mobile games for about 5 years. Did a lot of advert game work. Worked on an Animal Planet kind of a collectible card game, a KFC kart racing game, a tower defense game with the Truth Campaign at one point. And then at the 5-year mark, VR was kind of starting to develop. And so my first VR game project was Ghostbusters VR for the Google Cardboard. I had a brief stint in serious games. So I worked at a car research app called Relay Cars, and we created VR applications so that soldiers in the military could experience cars in virtual reality. Can't exactly pull up a car to the base. And so worked in that for a little bit. I worked at a virtual production studio called Mind Show, where we created tools for directors and actors to record animated TV shows in Unity. And all while doing that, I was working on my indie game Galactic Bar Fight for the MetaQuest, which I'm pretty happy with how it did. It was a team of 3, my first game director role and lead software engineer role. All of that led me to my current role at Alchemy Labs, who their most popular game is Job Simulator and Rick and Morty Virtual Reality. And I'm living the dream now.
Oh, no, I didn't break my mic. Mine's fine. Good morning. Thank you. So I told y'all shouldn't have gave me a mic. So my name is Neil. People call me Aerial Knight. I create a series of games called, well, now it's a series called Never Yield, with the upcoming We Never Yield called Aerial. But how I got started, I'm not as fancy as my co-panelist. Yeah, that's a good word. That sounds like a made-up word. But pretty much, little nerdy kid, kept getting beat up. I like video games. I wanted to make video games. White people wouldn't let me make video games. And then what had happened was, I had a choice. I was like, I could work at Target for the rest of my life, or I could say F it and just be like, let me take all the little bit of money I got and make my own little thing with the years of experiences that I had. So at least I had something to show for it, It was kind of like I'm making something for me type of thing, and whatever happens, happens. But people liked it. I was like, oh shoot, people like this. People bought it, and I get to make more games now. That's pretty much it, really. Y'all don't have to clap for that. Y'all clap for anything.
So first question for everybody. So this is about innovation, obviously. So I want each of you to kind of talk about what innovative spaces in gaming are you most excited about? Anybody can go first.
Sure, so I'm a mixed reality nerd, and so if anybody, the Apple Vision Pro is probably the more recent version of mixed reality, but it's really that I love the idea of turning your living room into, right? There's something, I think it's really neat, the concept of being able to map out a player's virtual space, create a 3D mesh, and then create gameplay elements within it. One of my favorite mixed reality games is Dr. Gordbort's Robot Invaders for the Magic Leap. There's also a Angry Birds mixed reality experience. So like, the pigs set up their tower or whatever on your coffee table, and then you have to like basically gear around and like sit in your living room, figure out how to shoot the slingshots. But yeah, mixed reality is like, to me, that's the future. I look forward to when the tech is actually affordable, because I think that's a big barrier. But I'm a big mixed reality fan in that.
What was the question?
Just what innovative spaces and games you're most excited about?
Oh, pass.
None.
So for me, I'm really excited about accessibility. Big surprise, the healthcare. So for me, accessibility is exciting. It's the start of a larger about kind of questioning the longstanding have about our audience. I'm not going to use the term, but people who play games are getting both older and 22 or 44-ish percent of people who play games identify should be making. A lot of studios still holding that their target audience is right teen. That's not plus, and that's not well. And I think accessibility is a really good starting point because anyone can become disabled in a lifetime. Right now, 20% of people who play games are currently disabled, and accessibility can teach a good. Hey, maybe we should be designing without the community. And once we start tackling that question, moving on to our gaming principles. Why isn't that reflected in our accessibility? Start, not an end to when.
That's
Wait,
such a good
hold on
point.
real quick.
You got a one. All right,
yeah,
go for it.
it's not a counterpoint. How can I disagree with that? You trying to get me canceled? I'm not. I agree.
Oh, no, I said you-
100% with what she just said. My only note, I guess, would be your last number with what was it, 40% of women and girls needed. My only thing with that is whenever we talk about that number, we're like, yes, more women. And I'm like, yes, 100% agree. Again, 100% agree. But can we talk about what's the demographics of that number? Because we say 40% women, and then it's like all white women, and then we're like, but we got 40% women, right? And I'm like, yeah, but so that's my only yeah, but I guess if we can kind of add asterisks.
As something I learned yesterday is that the most profitable gaming demographic in the United States across gender and race is middle-aged Hispanic women. And how many of us are designing for that population, right?
So yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I agree. Cool.
So speaking of more diversity, next question for y'all is, in what ways have developers of color brought innovative experiences to games, and what ways can they continue to do so? What do you?
Sure. Yeah. I think first and foremost, I think when I think about innovation, right, especially this year, to me, innovation isn't a tech thing. It's not even really a design thing. I think authenticity, as it's really our innovation, as it's really impacting the industry right now, is through authenticity. Connecting with communities, new communities in ways they haven't been connected with before in the past. So at Alchemy, I'm a part of a group called Almigos, where we are joined together to support the opportunities to educate and create opportunities for Latina game developers within the game industry. And one of the first things they showed me in a meeting was Puerto Rican game developers responding to Spider-Man Miles Morales. And there's these props on the wall, and to me, they're just props, right? But you see these Twitch streamers, and they're so excited because they're like, my grandma had the version of the Puerto Rican, or my uncle had that picture. My family, we all had this picture on the wall, and I think there's something really beautiful about helping people seen in our games, and I think that's the kind of innovation I definitely want to see more of. For me, I grew up, my family's from South Central LA. My grandparents had a little church in the heart of Compton, And so playing GTA San Andreas and GTA 5, seeing the Compton Courthouse in those games was mind blowing. Like as a teenager, I was like the game industry's critical part of my memories, right? I could think about so many times I was hanging out with my cousins in front of the church and like the Compton Courthouse is there. So, oh, my bad. And so yeah. And then like lastly, like one game I'm actually really excited to see is like coming up is like Tales of Kenzara Zhao. I know it's coming from the creator. He talked about how it comes from a place of grief about losing his father. As someone who like lost my mom pretty recently, I look forward to playing a game that kind of contextualized grief in terms of gameplay because I think I'm a game library. And I've never played a game that I think uh, focuses Black grief of losing a parent as a central theme. And so I'm super like I think right now authenticity in games is all and really innovation in games is all about authenticity and connecting with people in new ways. And so yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great. Sorry. No, yeah, man, you stole my line. Bar for bar. Drake. No, but 100% agree. But I think authenticity is really hard to do in a big studio because a big studio should be a melting pot with a bunch of different people, Black people, Hispanic people, all types of people, right? But on a smaller indie level, that's where we can like kind of really like drive home our culture and things like that. In my game, the characters say "What's up" by saying "What up, though," and that's a Detroit thing. We say that in Detroit, like But a big studio there would be a conversation about that. And the reason I can't work at a big studio is because I don't like conversations. I like being like, "Yo, we putting this in the game," and people ask me why. I'm totally fine with answering it, but we doing it, type of thing. And only somebody who's from that culture, who's like a part of that, and who knows that deeply, can kind of like challenge me on it, right? So yeah, I think we just kind of need those spaces and to be able to separate those spaces to understand why, not to defend big studios, but sometimes big studios don't need to like have that be 100% in focus because they're trying to like make a game for everybody, not just for one specific group. So there needs to be like some compromises and to say, yo, they're doing the vanilla version of this, but why are they doing the vanilla version of this? Is there like a reason for it? There's no excuses for when they get it really wrong. They should have, as long as they have people, us, in the room to kind of like make our voices be heard and they're listening to us, then I can understand it. So a lot of times now, like when I hear about certain situations, I need the context. I need to know who was in the room, if they were being listened to, just to kind of do a longer form of an answer to that question, if that makes sense. Look, y'all don't have to clap for everything, like, but I appreciate it.
The second part of that question, Chris, is so important. Very often when we talk about marginalized folks, we talk about we're being invited, but like we've been here and we've been innovating. And I think like the deficiency, not whether or not we can be successful, whether or not we're being recognized for those accomplishments. Thinking about my own experience a little bit, I fully worked on an FPS and didn't know that the FPS genre was founded by a Latino. I didn't know that a woman invented the compiler. I didn't know that a Black engineer invented the cartridge. Lesson. Such a name that's kind of gotten lost to history. And the burden is kind of on us to ensure that those are historicized and like concretized into memory. It's like all the other who are white who are also successful, but making sure that our accomplishments.
Great point. So switching gears real quick. So Nora, this is a question for you. Since you come from a medicine background, what relationship does neuroscience have to games, and how does that relate to action?
I'm gonna like be so unhinged with this answer. I'm like holding my chair. I'm like arms around, so cut me off if it's not making sense. But neuroscience is defined as the science of the brain. But for me, neuroscience is about understanding the world, and design is about creating it. For me, they've always gone hand in hand. And a lot of the times when I think about concepts that I learn in game design, my job, and classes of a lot of concepts that are talked about actually come from neuroscience first principles around like how we learn, how we direct the player's attention, how we architect particular emotional needs. All of that comes from and reflecting on like my experience working on Five Nights at Freddy's, a little bit of like a story about how that's applied in my life. We had an issue very early on in the development of the game where like our game wasn't very scary. Which is bad when you're making yeah. And we were adding a lot more jump scares, trying to like kind of package in a bunch of like moments that were supposed to be audience getting like less scary. Our players were just not really resonating with that at all. Then I came in, I joined the team late. Hey, like, wait a minute, let's take a step back. Let's think about this from a kind of scientific lens. And basically, like, TLDR of the neuroscience on that, when you evoke a startle response, like a jump scare, like animatronic jumping out at you, your brain like uses all the chemicals to like make adrenaline and it doesn't have any more. There needs to be a little bit of a delay between when you scare the player first and then when that another jump scare comes in later in order to actually evoke the feeling of fear. So we made a game a lot less like jump scares, so like got a lot of that density, and it became a lot scarier and it was actually successful. And thinking about how that relates to innovation, this is where I start going crazy. When, at its core, games are things that tickle the brain. Kind of it. We have a lot of layers of abstraction between games and brains. We have display and software and additional hardware and the player. But at the end of the day, it's just a connection between the screen and brain. So what if we took out all the stuff in the middle? For me, I worked in neural interfaces for a long time on motor disability, and neural interfaces today give us the ability to technology our thoughts. Imagine what a major ability if we didn't have controllers at all, and how incredible RPGs would be. Companion sees access to your raw emotion stuff. And I always think about like electricity that runs through your brain, electricity that runs through your body are fundamentally the same thing. I encourage designers to think about what happens.
So I'm a simpleton, and I was just gonna say I worked in mobile games, and like I learned colors can like guide players. So that's my simple contribution. Yeah.
So I don't think we can talk about innovation in games without talking about artificial intelligence, which has been a very popular thing in recent years. This is anybody can really answer this, but John, this is kind of directed more toward you. So artificial intelligence has made notable advances in the last few years, like ChatGPT and Midjourney. How do you view AI as an innovative tool versus the ethical concerns of plagiarism and replacing human developers?
Yeah, and I have chewed on this question backwards and forwards all week, right? And so I definitely like have two minds about it. I think the promise of AI, the promise of like simplifying the work we do, I love that, right? I think game development can be really tedious sometimes. There's lots of like, and you know, especially if you've worked on a game for a while and you like reach the midpoint and you realize maybe you didn't set up your prefabs right correctly, maybe things aren't centered correctly. In VR, right? We have to make sure things are the scales appropriate. And so I wish I had a virtual assistant that I could say, hey, can you clean up this mess for me? And that I could streamline some of those decisions I might have made and not realize. And so in that way, I think VR or AI as like a virtual assistant to assist in our game development work can be incredible. I think it can speed up a lot of things and it can take away some of the more tedious micromanagement elements of game development. What I don't like about AI, straight up, I feel like a lot of these really well-off AI companies are stealing people's work, and I don't think it's right that they get to take code that I wrote and throw it into a machine and have regurgitate a weak imitation of the creativity that I create. I don't think it's fair that it does it with art. I don't think it's fair that it does it with music. I don't think it's fair that it does it with design concepts. And my issue isn't so much the way they train the data, it's that there's no consent from the creator's part. I don't think that's fair. And so, when I worked at Mind Show, what I'd like to see, I worked on like a virtual Santa Claus project, and we were coming to the point where we needed a voice. And so they had this actor who supplied his voice to like an AI training library. And they're like, cool, we're going to give you $5,000 if you just let us use this voice for a project. We're going to give you $12,000 if you let us use this voice in perpetuity. I think that creators need to get paid for the work we do. I actually think there's a lot of creators who would be completely open to helping train an AI, but you have to pay them for the work they do. And if we're not going to do that, I don't know how in this IP obsessive society we lived in, you can just allow people to still work and go, hey, look, our machine, our AI is so brilliant. And it's not brilliant. We're brilliant, and it's taking our work.
Wait, so you are for it or against it?
I think it's still in front of us.
Okay. I think AI is like a gun, where the concept of a gun is, sensible. It's like, if the person uses it right, it's going to protect you. But look what you humans have done with guns. Like, I don't trust nobody with a gun, and then you don't want to be the person in the room without a gun. So that's how I feel about AI.
That was like so well said. I'm like preparing a follow up. I'm like, I don't actually have much of a follow up, but I guess like just to add like a very minor amount of nuance to that, I think it's very important to define our terms when we talk about AI, just to be respectful to folks who have been personally and professionally by it. Talk about AI in this context, it's specifically AI as it's applied to like generative artistic media, especially coming from a health background. When I have critiques about AI, people are always like, what about the AI that helps detect cancer cells? Yeah, that's good. Frustrating comment, but yeah. I think going off of that, like AI tools don't innovate, people innovate, and people also plagiarize. So when we're talking about these tools, I really want to like refocus the discussion around the decision makers that are using to replace human talent, AI in ways not consent or fair, rather than like stopping it.
So next question. All right. Okay. So next question. This one's directed toward you, Neil. So anyone else can chime in though. So what is your view on the relationship between innovation and risk, right? Because there's normally like this discussion of like, we'd like to innovate, but we don't know if it's going to be a sure thing. It might fail, right? And then there's this other kind of discussion around this lack of innovation in like AAA games, right? Like, why don't AAA games innovate? Well, it's because they have these budgets, these huge budgets, $100 million budgets, multi-year development cycles. Like, if they release a game, will it be successful? With that in mind, how do you see the role of AA games and indie games in the realm of innovation?
That's a good question. Thank you. Again, when I brought up like big studios and why they do the things they do, I think this kind of ties into it a little bit where, you might not like that Call of Duty is the same every year, but it doesn't make sense. Is it making money? Like, that's what they're here to do. They're a big studio. They got to pay all their people. They're trying to make some money, right? So in that sense, I'm like, okay, I get it. But if you're a small studio, if you're an individual, you're making something like as a small indie project or a small class project or something like that, why not take a big swing? Like the craziest thing that you could think of. Like, I think one of the most popular games, like indie wise, was the Octopus Dad game. I forgot. Yeah, Octodad. Right. The fact that we remember it, all of us, all four of us up here was like, oh yeah, Octodad, right? But there's 1,000 Call of Duty clones, and we can't name one of them, right? So I think that's the point. Like, if you're gonna do something, take a giant crazy swing. Say F it, who cares? Until they do.
Absolutely. And I would say also, I think we're in a really interesting time in that, like, I think I have feelings about live service games in general, but I think that is playing it safe. And we're seeing like a couple of really large games have played it safe with the live service model, and it has blown up in their face. And so I think like Anil saying, right? I think it's really about taking calculated risk, right? If you're in risk at all, make sure you know that's what you're doing, and make sure that there's purpose in it, right? Make sure that you believe in the game that you're bringing to the world. Um, yeah, yeah. I think.
I'm gonna put on my like AAA thinking hat for this one and be a little corporate. But I've straddled both worlds a little bit, and I think what I've come to is that different types of constraints lend themselves to different types of innovation in smaller AA or indie studios. There's smaller budgets, smaller expected returns, but also a really low chance of success. Like there's so many indie games that get released and not that many AAA games where the way to be successful is to differentiate yourselves. So when a lot of indie or triple or AA studios innovate, it tends to be in areas that are hyper visible to players, like mechanics, narrative, thematics, that category of design. Whereas in AAA, there's very big budgets, very high expected returns, and kind of like a medium chance of success. Like a lot of the reasons why AAA games are de-risked a little bit is because such a strong like gravitation pull towards them. People play League of Legends because their friends play League of Legends, regardless of how good or bad League of Legends is, at least in my experience. Makes my job a lot easier. So I think in that sense, there's a big financial push in AAA games to kind of keep producing the same thing and be successful by being familiar to those existing audiences. A lot of the ways that AAA companies in ways that are like not as visible to like in monetization. And I don't mean to be like the 15th person who like points at the Fortnite Battle Pass and starts hollering, but the Fortnite Battle Pass is a really good example of like how to make a monetization scheme that's high revenue, very low cost, and has a completely new content cadence that's sustainable for developers. That completely like the entire gaming landscape and reestablish one of the highest grossing platforms in the world. It's different, very different contexts, very different types of innovation.
I have a question though. So why? Like I see, I was talking to my friend Dan the other day, and we were watching a documentary about Last of Us 2, and we was like, "This is amazing, this is dope." But also, they had like a good 5 to 10 minute segment of why they chose to like have the blood from a bullet hit drip and blend in with the rain. And I was like, "How much time did you spend on that?" Like, how many people noticed that? And then the fact that Ellie swam differently if she was hurt in water. I'm like, that's cool, and technically that's innovation, but for who? Like, I know gamers don't care, and it seems like a waste of money. So like we getting these crazy budgets, we getting these games that take like 5 to 10 years, but for what? You know? So I don't know if you could answer that, but like that's kind of my like gripe with like innovation in the sense of AAA. That makes sense.
Yeah, totally. I think like in that case, I can't speak to that specifically because that's artists being artists. Artists are crazy.
Nah. They get paid. Like somebody told him to do that. You know.
I think hyperrealism is a goal that AAA has set, and no one has started questioning. Like, you could make anything. Why would you make this? Like, I don't understand it. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, as long as we're on the same page.
So, okay.
Look, y'all need to stop breaking mics. That's.
I enjoy that the mics have different colors. It helps keep track of them. So, okay, I think we're going to actually take questions now. So, do we have the question mic? So, yeah, I guess we'll. Yeah, it's broke. Oh, no. Try to keep them short, but I saw your hand first. So, this guy. Black guy, white shirt. Wait, is the mic not coming?
It ain't working. Yes, it is. Never mind. Black guy, white shirt. You?
All right.
All right. What's your name? So I stop calling you black guy, white shirt. Oh. Done. All right. Hey.
very much for the shout out. I had a question particularly to Noor. I really appreciated your discussion on accessibility. I was gonna ask, has there been any particular accessibility feature or game that has caught your improve in terms of accessibility, or things that game designers in the room should try to keep up on for an industry?
This is such a good question. Thank you for asking. I think accessibility, especially in lagging behind a lot, but the one that I really want to shout out is God of War. Any of them.